So this month we wanted to give a welcome to Marion County in Florida. So their link is on the agenda, but I'm going to drop a link to their catalog in the chat as well. It looks very pretty. I enjoy it. So big welcome to Marion County. All right. I'm going to pass it over to James to talk about Aspen community meeting news.
Hey everybody. So I just had a power outage here in my remote office at home, but the lights are back on, so I'm thrilled about that. I'd like to start off by if everybody who was there could think of things you might want to say now. Specifically, if you have any comments, if you were a part of the working group and you have any comments about what you've discovered or what you're looking for. If you're a part of the testing subgroup and you have anything that you'd like to say to the larger group, or if you work with translations into non-English languages for the interface and you'd like to say anything about those achievements, then have them ready to go. I get anxious when I ask, does anybody have anything to say? And then there's crickets. So I just prepped you guys if you have anything to say. I imagine nobody does, but I could be wrong about that. Please feel free to interrupt me whenever you want to say something. So we had another Aspen community meeting. We reported those of us who are working on making, trying to identify patterns that we see when our staff need to manually group records or shape groupings of records, looking for patterns so that we can then go back to Bywater and ourselves and say, hey, we think that reindexing this, and this might work better for automated grouping. The folks at Arlington and the folks at Swan are reviewing what looked to me to be hundreds, if not thousands, of manual groupings, looking for those patterns. My big accomplishment in the recent past is figuring out why Wings of Fire was so broken in our catalog in Nashville. And I've got a model for that if anybody's interested. And I can help you straighten out Wings of Fire. We also talked about creating an accessibility facet in addition to the other search facets to more easily identify items that have closed captioning and items that are in Braille within our collections. And I will continue to work on that. I also asked at that community meeting, I was looking for new strategies on managing the translations into non-English languages. At this point, Nashville's Spanish translation is pretty old, and there's several labels that we've realized, it's a new label that shows up in the interface, and we hadn't identified that it was there, and so now it's still in English. And so we're just trying to figure out ways to more easily and comprehensively identify when new work needs to be done on those translations. And so the group came up with requests, a set of 4 requests that I haven't passed on to Bywater yet, but I will in writing soon, and I'll give you the little heads up right now. It would be good for us to get some stats on translated interface usages. It would be good to more easily pull out what needs translated, filtered by the flags that are in the code. We have a third request to redo the interface for translations. I believe like the in-place translating mode is brilliant and perfect, but the export and search translation page could use some updates. And then finally, continue or there is an idea that has been floated around since the beginning of the translated interface to be able to easily share the translated labels among customer libraries, and so continue to work on that. Now these, I've got more color to throw on that for the Bywater team, but I'll just keep on talking now. And so at this point, if you had anything to say about grouped works, working group, or translation, go ahead and do it now. 3, 2, 1. Okay. Moving right along, the next thing that we talked about in the community meeting was regression testing. And so with every release of Aspen, there's an opportunity to test to make sure that all of the previous fixes continue to be fixed. I've developed a testing script using Selenium IDE that tests for some very basic stuff. What I will ask this group and continue to ask of the Aspen community group is for volunteers to help identify what should be tested. And also the testing utility that I'm starting off with is point and click. Like, you can develop the tests yourselves. And so these are for things like, just logging in. Can a patron log in? Can a patron place a hold? Can a patron do this, that, or the other? And there is a sub Slack, is that what we call those? We have a Slack channel on testing. If you're interested in participating in that, please go ahead and join that Slack channel and let me know that you are interested in working on the regression tests. And and we have some other things for which there are no updates.
For a second, I was like, did your screen freeze? Or no, it's just cool. Well, does anyone have any questions or comments about what happened in the most recent community meeting?
Morgan, I'm going to jump in and answer. I see Steven's question in the chat about orientation to the groups and what they do, and I'll just give a really quick rundown. The Aspen community meeting that James is reporting on is a meeting that happens every 2 months and is completely run by Aspen partners, by librarians using Aspen. I tend to sit in and take notes and listen, but it's completely run by you and the things that you're thinking about. They have formed some subgroups. So the grouped work subcommittee or subgroup, I think you're calling yourselves, they're
grouped works working group.
Grouped work working group. Thank you, James. That's something that's focused on a very specific problem, and they're doing really awesome and important work. And I'm really excited to see what comes out of that group. So there's the main community group, any subgroups over there. We also have a couple of groups for specific ILSs. Not every ILS has one. But if you're interested in having an ILS subgroup, reach out to me and I can either connect you with the existing one or get you started on starting one of your own. I think that's all we do have one other committee that's going right now, and that's the AspenCon committee. We're planning our very first AspenCon for March 2024. We are just getting off the ground, so if you're interested in that, we don't have a report this time because our meeting got delayed for another 2 weeks, but if you're interested in joining that committee, let me know. And I think that's it. Anything I missed, team? Okay.
We kind of have a new testing group that will
thank you, James. Yeah.
Take it away, Morgan.
Oh, awesome. Aaron has a question about AspenCon in the chat. I don't think we had it on the agenda, but yes, it is going to be in Colorado. So good question. Okay, so let's move on to some new documentation we just wanted to make sure that everyone knows about. It is linked on the agenda, but the first one is that Cal and I have been working on, and this is still a work in progress, but eventually our vision is to have kind of role-based paths for you on the help center. So if you're a library administrator, like if you're a full administrator, or if you're just doing things at the library level, if you're in a consortium, stuff like that. So this is a page we have put together so far. I think with this, we're, keeping people in mind where, as you hire new people, or, maybe you leave and someone else takes over, that those people will be able to get that continuing education and have a good starting point with the documentation and tutorials that are kind of more tailored towards what do I need to know as an administrator at Aspen. So I dropped that link in the chat. Yeah, Cal says, choose your own adventure training is coming. That's basically what we want it to be. The other thing that we are working towards is, since we are in a unique position at Bywater of supporting both Aspen and Koha, as well as other open source products, we have been working on joint documentation. So if you are a Koha library using Aspen, you don't have to always look in entirely two different places to get information about functionality where there's setup required in both Koha and Aspen. So this is our first kind of official blog post where we, Cal actually put this together with our Koha educators about patron account messages. So if you are a Koha library and you want to learn more about what messages you might want to display or not in Aspen from the borrower's account, take a look at that. But we have a few others that are in the pipeline, and we're just going to keep on working on combined documentation for that stuff. The last thing that I wanted to highlight, and this is just something I did today, but I've been working on it for a little bit, is an easier way to figure out format. So when you see something, and if you're using bib level format determination in Aspen, so that means that Aspen isn't being told to look at your item data, like item types or things of that nature. Just an easy way to say, okay, Aspen thinks that this is a CD when I think it should be a book. Why does Aspen think it's a CD? So let me copy that URL for those who might not have the agenda up. So this was already on our documentation on the Help Center, but I wanted a way for people to just more easily see the value that's on the format map paired with the default format display paired with the rule. So why is Aspen determining that this is that format? And these are all based on the Library of Congress like bib data manual. So it's all based on real cataloging rule stuff. And I made it searchable. So you don't have to do like a Control F on your browser. You can just start typing in the format you're looking for, and then you'll be able to see the format and the rules and stuff. So have fun playing with that and searching it. I've just been like typing different formats in just to see it filter because I think it's just really fun. Proud of myself, guys. I don't know a lot of JavaScript and all that. Any questions about the documentation or comments? Okay. Well, I'm going to pass it over to, oh, is Elise here? Maybe she wants to talk about things. She is here. Okay, please. Do you want to talk about upcoming conferences?
Sure. I wasn't going to be here. Now I'm here. Surprise.
Yay.
Hey, y'all. So yeah, we have a lot of fun stuff coming up. So we just want to let you know where you might be able to find us in real life the next few months. So right now, Adam and Bill are freezing at the OLA Super Conference in Canada. Our Kansas Summit is coming up February 23rd at the Derby Public Library. So if you are in Kansas or Kansas adjacent, tell everybody, please go to that if you can. And we will be live streaming that on YouTube Live. So there's a link in the article there. We'll be at ACRL, so we're super excited about that, and stay tuned because we are planning a get together, like maybe a dinner or something, so stay tuned. And then Computers and Libraries, March 28th through 30th. That's going to be an amazing conference. We have a lot of partners that are presenting there, so we are super excited about that. I think Darien, Nichols, Click, a bunch of people are presenting, so super excited. And also we want to start doing some more partner facing webinars. So if there's any topic that you'd really like to share about or anything cool that you're doing, let us know. You can email outreach@bywatersolutions.com. We would love to feature you in a webinar. So that's it for me. Thanks so much.
So if anyone is going to the Computers and Libraries conferences, I will be there and I'm really excited. So I know we have some of our library partners are presenting, like Montgomery County and Darien, and yeah, so I'm excited to see people. Anyway, on to Jordan to talk about priority planning and review.
Thank you, Morgan. Oh, I wish I could be there too, and just to see all these presentations. It's going to be so much fun. Okay, looking towards the future, like we do every month. We first do a review of what we said our plan was for this monthly release, and then what we actually ended up doing, because sometimes that can shift, and we just like to make sure that we have full transparency and all of you can see what we've been working on. So on the left, you see our plan from last time. On the right, you see what we got done. If you look at the release notes and look at what Mark and I shared, we really were working hard on some of the high priority bugs. And then the partner priorities, meaning things that people are putting tickets on, patterns that we're noticing across libraries on things that they're interested in. We also wanted to take the time to do a little bit of the 2022 feature cleanup. So when you think about Mark mentioning like the little thing with linked accounts, it's those little making sure once we get feedback on features that we've put out there and you have feedback to give back to us, that we have a chance to just kind of make those little tweaks. We are still looking at an Aspen events platform that's in the planning stages. And it's not just for events native to Aspen, although that's a part of it. It will also be integration with additional events platforms, external events platforms. So like Communico comes to mind. So if you have Communico, you can watch for that too. And then we didn't quite get a chance because we were working on all the latest stuff to start working on the translation support for LIDA. But I will say that that is coming. So yeah, on to our plan for the next release. As we were doing our review of all of the partner priorities and the things that you're asking for, we found a good number of things that are fairly large in size. I'm talking like it's going to take a developer a week or two to do it. And then because of the parts of the code that it's touching are really complex, it's going to take a lot of testing. So we have the time right now. We thought we would take the time to tackle some of those bigger things that people have been requesting that usually we have a hard time squeezing in just because of the complexity. So you'll see some of those next month. We're going to do, again, as many as we can, but they're going to be the bigger, more complex ones. So just to give you a little bit of a heads up there. And I know I've talked to some of you about this. You're like, you've been asking for months, we really, really want this. And what you've been hearing from me is, I know, but it's hard and it's big. So we're going to tackle a few of those since we can. Mark alluded to this earlier. I really wanted to put single sign-on on here because all of a sudden we've just had people asking about single sign-on on at least once a week. And also, as Mark said, it takes, there are some standards here, but every implementation is a little bit different. So we can't just like turn on single sign-on and say, hey, everybody, you get it now. You can just go in and configure it, and here's how you do it. We do want to work to be able to do that in the future for standard implementations. But we're learning right now when we're building all of the configuration options that we need to support that. So what that means is that if you are interested in having single sign-on in the next year or so, you probably want to reach out to me. I want to say we're working on these on a first come, first serve basis because that's the most fair way to do it. That's not going to be strictly how we do it, though. We are going to be looking for, okay, everybody using SAML. We might try to group those SAML ones together. So see what we can learn, see what configuration options we can build with the goal of being able to have those not require custom development in the future. This is going to be a big project, and it's not going to be a project where it's like, okay, March and April, we're working on single sign-on and we wash our hands of it and we're done. It's going to be more like e-commerce where we do a little bit and then we do a little bit more and then we do a little bit more. But just from the interest that I'm hearing from people, it's going to be something that we're going to continue to work on. So you'll probably keep hearing a little bit about that every month. So the message, we have a good number of people right now that we're working with. If you are interested in that, reach out, and also know it's not something we can turn on for you tomorrow. It is going to take some time. And then, as I mentioned, Aspen events, I changed it from platform to enhancements this month, if you're really paying attention to the words, just because I think we're doing more with how we already do events. It's not just the platform we're building, it's how we're integrating with other services. I'm gonna check the chat for a minute. I don't think there's any questions, but nope. Any questions on our plans or what we worked on last month or we're planning on working on next month?
Ooh, I got a question.
Yes.
I'm not even sure if this is on your radar, but when you showed the new messages for the placing holds, this kind of triggered something. And there's a weird message. I'm going to try and I couldn't type it out because I couldn't get the idea. But when you place a hold on a material that can only be picked up at a certain location, and you select a different location for the hold pickup, you get a weird error. Is that on your radar?
My guess without knowing is, I see Mark's unmuting, is that that's a message we're getting from the ILS. Is that right?
Yeah.
Or
We
okay.
do, though, have the ability by format to restrict things to only be able to be picked up at the owning location. So depending on the format, we've got some libraries that are using it with like, we lend artwork or we lend hotspots, but you have to come into the library that owns it in order to get it. So if it's something that's not like these books can only be picked up, but it's a specific format where they all apply, and you could certainly create a unique item type and format for that. Then you can say only pick these up at the owning location. So
yeah, no, I totally got that. I've got that down. But
okay.
when you try and place the hold on the item and you select a different location than the holding location where you're supposed to pick it up, you get kind of this weird red error message, and it's not very clear.
So it should only allow you to select those locations. So if you wanted to put in a ticket, we can help take a look at your configuration and see what we need to tweak, but you should be able, like, we should have functionality already built to do that.
Yeah, no, it's not the functionality. That works perfectly. It's just the message that appears when you try and place the pickup location as not the location that can only get it from.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, put in a ticket. We'll take a look and see see what we can do.
Okay.
And see if it's a message or if there's a setting we need to tweak or yeah. Cool. Those are always fun.
Right. Any other questions?
Hi, Jordan. It's Katie from the Wild Office. In the when you're showing LIDA, I noticed in the holds it had like pickup date and stuff, and I just was looking on my own phone and I didn't see it on my Android. Is that something new, the next release, or is that tied to a ILS policy?
I would actually need Kirsten to say that for sure. I don't believe that was part of the work of this sprint. My guess is it's ILS, but Kirsten, do you have that info, or do you know off the top of your head?
I think you're muted, Kirsten.
That good?
Yeah.
Yay.
That's weird. My button was unmuted. Okay, anyway, it's not new, and it should be pulling the same information that you would see in the discovery holds list.
Okay.
So if you're not and you think we can get that from Symphony, because I know you're a Symphony library, put in a ticket and we'll look into that for you. And we'll either make it, if we can get it, we'll get it pulled for you. And if we can get it and there's not a configuration option, we'll put in a development request. If we can't get it from the API, then you can put in a development request with Symphony for us to get that from the API.
Thank you. I was just like, am I missing something? Thank you.
All right. On to the discussion topic of the day, which kind of ties in. I'm never going to get this right. there we go. The grouped works working group. I think the work that they're doing, again, they're trying to identify patterns. My understanding is to make recommendations for things, how we might make the grouped works better. But we have a suggestion I want to talk about today, and that's with graphic novels. This does play a little bit into the Wings of Fire series. So if folks don't know about that one, if you're wondering what we're talking about and you haven't heard anyone talk about this, you'll see a little bit of it today. Okay, so this is looking at how right now, by default, graphic novels sometimes group with the book format of the same, with the same title and author. So for our record grouping rules, right now, title and author need to match. And if those match, for both the graphic novel and the book, those two will group together. The easiest way to kind of like look at this is through an example. So I have an example. It's linked to, you have a link to this deck within the agenda. So you have a link to this, but let's just go over and look at it. So we have from Maine Library Alliance, we have The Handmaid's Tale, and we have book, audiobook, CD, audiobook, keep going down. And then we have the graphic novel showing here. Just based on how record grouping today, that's how it works. Not there. If the titles are different, it's not going to group that way. And if the authors are different, it's not going to group that way. So skipping down here kind of to the note, one way that a library might handle this is to catalog the illustrator as the primary author, and then they won't group if you don't want them to group. An easy fix for this that we are proposing, so our assumption is we don't think these should group, okay? It is the same title and author, but they're fundamentally different works. The words are different. If you want to think about it that way, it's almost like an abridged versus an unabridged. But if you disagree with that, we can definitely talk about that a little bit more. But that's kind of the assumption that we're moving forward with. So I just wanted to call that out. But you can question that assumption if you want. What we're proposing for a first fix is that the format of graphic novel. So looking at the format rules for that new documentation that Morgan shared earlier, if it gets graphic novel, it would not be allowed to group with the book. So here we have the Wings of Fire. Swan has done some work to make this work. And like James said, he has rules to work around. There are ways to make this work, but we want to make it less manual work. So here we have the Dragonette Prophecy. We have the book, audiobook, CD, same title and author. And then if you come down here, there's a different title, but some libraries have these cataloged with the same title, same author, but we get the ebook, which sometimes will show as e-comic, and the graphic novel as two separate, which is what we would expect, because this is, the book and this is a graphic novel. So that's what we're aiming for. We don't have to have an answer to this today, but I was just kind of wondering what folks in the group think about making that change.
This is Scott. Hi, it's Swan. Jordan, I know you're expecting me to speak up, but I've actually tempered my opinion on this since we talked earlier this week. And looked at some examples, and the amount to which this would be applicable is less than what I was expecting, because it really does have to do with cases when the author truly is the same. And so I think it's workable. My only concern, and actually she just showed it, that maybe I shouldn't be concerned about it, was the idea of e-resource versions and whether they would be grouping in the right place, and if we would have the ability still to sort of retool that if there were an error with e-resource data that we couldn't control.
It is actually a little bit easier to retool them if we do this, because as most of you know, when you manually ungroup something, the thing that you ungroup, you can't regroup it with something else, which can be a little bit of a problem. So if we prevent that from grouping in the first place, if we don't get great e-content data, then you'll have the ability to group that one with the e-content. Whereas if you're ungrouping it, then you don't. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Yeah.
Say it again. I'm sorry.
Okay, we'll get a visual. It's so hard without it. Okay, so what we are doing is wanting to ungroup. Let's use this one. We want to ungroup this graphic novel.
Right.
If we manually ungroup it, according to how Aspen works today, that thing that has been ungrouped cannot be added to another grouped work. So if we had a separate one that was the e-content, we wouldn't be able to group the graphic novel with the e-comic version because it had been ungrouped. And we would end up with 3. We would end up with this main one, the graphic novel physical one that had been ungrouped, and then the e-content e-comics that would be a third one that Aspen would prevent us from grouping with the graphic novel.
Right.
Yeah. So, but if these automatically don't, if the graphic novel is automatically ungrouped and we don't have to manually do it, then Aspen will let us group it with that e-content.
Right. And I suppose my question, because I haven't really looked into it, but the e-resources like graphic novels have good data to create those groups on their own. My question was more about if we go this route and then things are sort of mixed up in the e-resource world. There's a graphic novel e-book attached to a book, the other way around. A, you know, is that something we should be afraid of happening? And B, is there a way to then clear that up? It may not be.
That's more a question for that working group.
Yeah, it might be.
If that's
Exactly.
what we're looking for. Yeah. It's and the gist of your question that I'm hearing is, are we having trouble with e-comics from other vendors grouping with the regular book that is not a graphic? Okay.
I haven't seen much of that, but there's so few examples that, you know, in general. So it's something I can look into. I'm on that group, so I'll put it on my list to dig into.
Cool. I don't know where we landed with that as far as like, is this a good idea? Or is this something we should maybe wait and get more information on? Would this be helpful, or could it potentially cause harm?
I feel like it might be a good idea, but I'm also the only one talking, so I'm going to mute for a bit.
I'm seeing some in the chat that are saying that would be very helpful. I'm in favor of not grouping the graphic novels. Let's see, I'm kind of scanning. So Amanda notes that she had some issues with the formats, some saying book and some saying graphic novel and some saying comic. Amanda, I'm assuming that's across physical copies. And that might be something where we can look at those physical records. Okay, Amanda says that's Hoopla and Libby. Okay, those would be helpful examples if you could share them, probably for both me and the working group. Let's see. I think that's most of what I'm seeing in here. Thank you, Amanda. She says she'll send them over. I'm going to say a tentative. So, and I also recognize we might not have all of our catalogers here. We're really lucky to have Scott here, but for lots of people, the discovery person is not the cataloging person. So we won't make any final decisions today. This also has some other implications because this kind of sends us down a path. So I'm going to introduce another question. So, and maybe this is my understanding of the working group is they're looking for patterns for things that aren't supposed to group today, or that are grouping incorrectly today, things that we can identify and fix. This is more of a philosophy of what we want to do with our grouping in the future, or other changes we might want to make. So an example is with the illustrator. Like we said, some libraries for the graphic novels are cataloging the illustrator as the primary author, but we could also just look at the illustrator, which we're not right now. And that's going to have more implications for things more than graphic novels. So an example that I hear Mark give all the time is 'Twas the Night Before Christmas. It's been around forever. It's a kid's book. The illustrator actually makes a difference. Like, do we want 50 different 'Twas the Nights Before Christmas because the illustrators are all different? Or are we happy grouping them together and maybe make the illustrator a little bit more prominent, like when you're choosing an edition? What this would also have an impact on the Harry Potter illustrated edition. So those, I'm sure most people here know the ones that have basically more pictures than the originals. Other considerations and things that we probably need either that working group or another group to look at. How consistently are illustrators cataloged? Because if we're looking at them and they're not consistently cataloged, then that's just going to make Aspen more inconsistent and more confusing. Something that comes to mind here is like some of the language work we did last year, where sometimes they would group and sometimes they didn't, and we just needed to figure that out. I mentioned the illustrators' names becoming more prominent. We don't want to use it for grouping if you can't see what data, like how are these actually different? We need to make it clear how they were different. But there might be some benefits there too. We could also have things like author, illustrator, filters or facets. Again, not something you would have to have. We have lots of facets and filters, but if that was something you're interested in, we could do that. Similar things, the young readers editions, occasionally, again, depending on cataloging and how you, especially how you catalog those titles, sometimes the young readers edition can get combined with the adult version of that same title, and that can cause confusion. Abridged versus unabridged, depends on how many of these you have in your catalog, but again, depending on your cataloging, can maybe cause a grouping issue we wouldn't want. Or narrators for various editions, like if you're talking about illustrators, well, why not narrators? Jim Dale, the narrator for Harry Potter, for example, he's just a great narrator. He did an example, he did a version of Peter Pan. So if I want to listen to Peter Pan, I want the Jim Dale version. That's how much do we want to support those things? How much of a rabbit hole are we digging into, or is it good enough? I think my question for the community with this one is, where do we want to, we're talking about this because this is the #1 issue that the community brought up last year. They said, we want to talk about grouping. We want to talk more about record grouping. That's why it's coming up here. How do we want to handle this? Do we want to put this as part of that community and say, we're going to start talking about this in community meetings? Do we just want to leave it in that subcommittee, or that working group, which to me was very much, we're going to find the patterns, but we could expand that. Or is it something we want to do like what we did with linked accounts, where I had meetings with the libraries that were interested in linked accounts. We kind of wrote it all out, came up with a plan, and then just implemented it. So how do we want to move forward with these kinds of changes is really what I'm asking the community, the best way to get feedback from you and get those things prioritized.
Speaking as a member of that group, I will say that this isn't exactly on my radar in that context. That's more looking into things that we don't already understand. I mean, this has been a sort of a thing that we're aware of, and I think the solution to this needs to sit within the community, because there's more. We just need more buy-in on. There's too many ways to handle it, and it is a known entity, and so I think it's ready for the community.
Yes, I would not so much on ungrouping. When you said ungrouping issue, I had one where the exact thing you said, where it's it was a young edition, young readers edition, where I had to manually ungroup them, but that's far less work. Like that, I mean, that's far less work of the ungrouping in comparison to getting things to group correctly. And I'm not sure if I could say like what the ramifications would be in comparison. What will it do? I have no clue if we go that way. But as I've talked to you about, there's been in conjunction with the ebook, where the author is been switched on the ebook. Not it's the set, 2 authors instead of 1. And on the ebook, they've mentioned the second one and not the first one. And so therefore, if it was some way of like the implications of that, maybe where it's like a grouping issue, might solve more problems than it would create. I don't know, because of the fact that, like I told you before, we talked about it. It's like, when you have anything that's an anthology or anything where there's more than 1 author, it won't group if the ebook has put 1 author before the other. So, and maybe looking at multiple levels or saying match on 1 or match on 2 would be, I don't know how to make that work though.
Okay. So what I kind of heard from Scott is the working group is kind of doing their own thing. We have other things to consider. Also, we have other things to consider with grouping. So it's not, this might not be the most important thing to work on.
I still think it's important to work on. We get comments on it fairly often.
Okay.
Yeah. I have, 1, 2, 3 ideas about how each of these things could be resolved though. And that's sort of where the challenge is I don't know what the solution is for some of these cases. So many people are mentioning that ungrouping is sufficient. We've run into cases where there's more than one young reader edition, and those, of course, get stuck because we can't group them back together. So, I mean, the other sort of question that I would have is search relevancy. If we were to pull like an illustrated Harry Potter, it would fall down the list and maybe not be findable because people are finding, the main Harry Potter up at the top because of, the weight that a big group has. So maybe the solution isn't more of a visual change than an actual grouping change. So I think that it isn't worth seeding this discussion early. And
Okay.
yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah,
Keisha and Scott. Oh yeah. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I was like, I concur. Like, we had to ungroup all of the Silent Night, like the night before Christmas as well. We did all of that. We ungrouped them because we thought the illustrator is very important in juvenile. But I don't know how many more problems that would create in, let's say, adult books where it doesn't really matter. What I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know how many, because I was like, yes, it would fix something over here, but I have no idea what it would fix, what the unintended problems would be. So I would say, like you said, to bring it to community and see if anyone, maybe they've had more problems. I have no clue as far as that, like unintended or things that they have seen go wrong. Because again, we currently only have Overdrive. We will be getting Canopy, so I don't know what the other big e-resources, what problems it would cause.
Hopefully Canopy will have better metadata soon, but that's a totally different thing. Hey everybody, this is James. I've lost track. Keisha and Scott, when you referred, I don't know if you guys were talking about grouping matters, like all the grouping matters, or the question of should we do this graphic novel stuff that Jordan is suggesting. I've lost track. Can somebody help me get back on track?
I was referring to the part about looking at Illustrator and specifically, not all of the grouping stuff. Like, I was in my head, it's a good idea to do it by the format at the top, because we don't group our graphic novels with our other, we consider them totally different entities, different works, kind of like Harry Potter book is not the Harry Potter DVD. So we consider them different. So if you do it from the format, that's cool. I would love to also say, let's separate it by illustrator, because again, that would solve a lot of problems in picture books. But I don't know what the logic is behind it and what grouping issues it would cause by adding another feature. I just have no clue.
So are we, and maybe this is the question for Jordan. And Jordan, did you hear a clear directive on what to do with graphic novels?
No, but that turned out not to be my question. And that's kind of where it's getting a little, let me like kind of explain. So I was looking at this and then I'm like, oh, we're like cracking the can opener on a can of worms. And here's the beginning of that can of worms. Where do we have these conversations and where do we have these debates as a community? Because this meeting, I want to make sure everyone knows what's going on, but it's a lot for this meeting. And like I said, the catalogers aren't always here. So is this something that you all want at your community meeting? Do we want a separate working group? Or I think we need a lot of cataloger input because they know how your records are. And then we need a good amount of developer input because the developers know how it works today and have thought a lot about the potential ramifications. So it's kind of like, it could sit on either side. How do we want to move forward with this thing that the community has identified as most important to them?
I'd like to see a special meeting for this because one being that I feel like I am opposed to kind of what the group is saying as this goes. So I would want to get feedback from the staff at my libraries and then put that together with my thoughts and have the opportunity to discuss it at a meeting of the interested people.
Thanks, Janelle.
I agree with that.
Is that something that it's maybe a fine point? Does community want to organize that, or you want me just to throw together a meeting? We can make it like at the same time as this one, since most people will have that. A lot of people have that time slot free.
I say just throw together a meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, then I concur. A meeting would be fine, but also like if you have general questions like this one or other ones that you want to discuss, if we get them early enough, we could get people who couldn't be there to at least give their input, like everyone at our own location.
Cool. I think we'll do it similar to the way we did the linked accounts, where we kind of threw all the issues out on the table, then prioritize the issues as a group, and then tackled them one at a time. Does that sound good? I see
Yeah.
James has a thumbs up, but I can't see everybody's face.
Yep,
Okay.
Yep.
I agree.
Okay, cool. We will do that then. That's what I was looking for, is just kind of next steps from all of you and how you want to tackle the thing you identified as important. So I'll hand it back to Morgan. I think we're a little bit out of time.
Oh yeah, we sure are. Good discussion, everybody. It's nice that we have so many knowledgeable people here. Looking forward to what you guys come up with. But yeah, it is the end of the Aspen gathering. So thank you everyone for coming. And we look forward to seeing you again next month.